Thank you all for being here this evening. I know we're competing with a PTA meeting. We're competing with the opening of Paul Simon's exhibit at the Skirball. And you chose us. So we are very, very grateful to you for being here this evening. And you will not be disappointed because we are so honored to have with us this evening the author of The Reflective Parent, How to Do Less and Relate More with Your Kids, Dr. Regina Pally. And I have to say, as a testament to Dr. Pally, her son, Dr. Alex Cord, was our speaker 2 months ago here for the Open Mind. He wrote a book, The Upward Spiral, and he was a wonderful speaker, a wonderful young man, and it seemed like a wonderful parent of a 3-month-old. So we know what a great job parenting Dr. Pally has done, and we're all excited. I know I am, and I have 2 grown girls, but we can all learn something new, and then they're the grandchildren too. So this is a book for everyone, and Dr. Pally, we're so grateful to you for writing it, for sharing this evening with us here. For those of you who don't know Dr. Pally, she is a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst. She has been working in the community for 35 years. And in 2008, she founded the Center for Reflective Parenting to help promote healthy child development by strengthening the relationship bonds that children have with all those who care for them. So we are very grateful that she's here with us this evening to educate us all on parenting. We also have with us this evening Dr. David Miklowitz, who is a professor of psychiatry in the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry here at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. And we are going to have a discussion following Dr. Pally's presentation. Dr. Pally and Dr. Miklowitz will be up on stage to discuss some of the things that have come out in Dr. Pally's presentation. Following that, we will have a Q&A. If you want to ask a question, please wait for the microphone to get to you. One of our board members or Ernie will be bringing around the microphone. And please, if you could keep your question to a 1-part question. That way, everybody who would like to ask a question will have the opportunity to do so. Following the Q&A, you will have an opportunity to purchase a copy of The Reflective Parent to even further your education. And Dr. Pally will be in the foyer to sign the books. So I hope, and I have to say the last few Open Minds we have run out of books, so be sure to get back there and purchase your book. For those of you here for the first time, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Open Mind. This is our community lecture and film series open to the public at no charge, where we bring together thought leaders in science and culture to present programs about mental health issues. We hope that you leave this evening having learned something new, and that if you feel that these programs are a benefit to the community, that you will support them by making a donation to the Open Mind through the Friends. We have envelopes outside. You can join by visiting our website, friendsofassemblyinstitute.org. You'll also receive a thank you note tomorrow with a link to the donation page. So please, we really need your support so we can bring speakers like Dr. Pally, Dr. Miklowitz. Next month, we're bringing Maya Salovitz, who is a science journalist. She is going to be talking about addiction. Her book is Unbroken Brain, and we're bringing her from New York. So in order to bring programs like this to the community, we need everybody to help support us. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Regina Pally.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's my privilege and honor to be speaking here today. Can everyone hear me? Anybody? Okay. Not just because the Semel Institute does such wonderful work, but also on a personal basis, because I did my residency here. I graduated in 1977 from the Department of Psychiatry. And also on another personal note, my own mother was hospitalized here for a psychotic depression back in 1988. So I have a lot of fond feelings about the work that the Semel Institute is doing. Okay, let me talk about my book now. It's called The Reflective Parent: How to Do Less and Relate More with Your Kids. This is a book for all parents. One of my mottos is, early is better, but it is never too late. I think of reflective parenting as like the Swiss Army knife for raising kids. There's a tool for every situation that you can encounter with your child. So this book is for parents with a child of any type, of any age, and in a family circumstance of any type. The book's a little different than a lot of other parenting books, because most parenting books just focus on a particular age usually, and this book focuses on the whole arc of childhood, from the prenatal period through adolescence and beyond. And it's also different in that most books focus on a particular problem, like how to get your kids to sleep, or how to get them to do their homework, or sibling rivalry, or things like that. This book sort of takes a more overarching approach, and it's going to help you do more effectively whatever else it is you're trying to do with your child. And lastly, it's a little different from other books because most books are focused on children. You know, what children need, what to do for your child. And I believe that for any approach to parenting to work, it's got to work for the parent as well as for the child. So this book focuses on parents as much as it does on kids. So basically, in a nutshell, what reflective parenting is, it's a set of tools and guidelines that are known to be associated with more positive child development, with reducing stress for parents, and for promoting what I will describe later in more detail is called reflective capacity. Now, my philosophy is every parent wants their child to do well. I believe no parent should ever be judged or blamed for what they're doing, because everybody is trying their best. All families have challenges. Some families have more challenges than others. And in fact, you'll find, I hope, that reflective parenting is even more important the more challenges your family faces. The ideas in this book come from my own professional experience as a psychiatrist and psychotherapist and psychoanalyst, as well as my own personal experiences with raising my 3 children, and also from my studies of neuroscience, and finally from the nonprofit organization that I started in 2008. And I want to tell you a little bit about that organization. Now, actually, we changed our name from the Center for Reflective Parenting to the Center for Reflective Communities because we realized that parents and children really are supported in a whole network of care providers. So the Center for Reflective Communities is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to promoting healthy child development by strengthening the relationship bonds that children have with their parents and all the rest of the people involved in their care. And we do this through techniques designed to enhance reflective thinking in caretakers. We do a whole variety of things. We've developed a parent group model called the Reflective Parenting Program, and it looks like a regular parenting group where parents talk about all kinds of issues that are coming up with their children, but all of our techniques are designed to enhance their reflective thinking, which means being able to understand their child's perspective as well as their own. We provide educational workshops for teachers, school administrators, home visitors, home visiting supervisors. We've even done reflective parenting, reflective programs in residential treatment centers. We provide direct services in a number of schools. We're running reflective parenting programs, and we're also doing research. We've been very lucky to have a collaboration with UCLA, Blair Pally and her team at the Nathanson Family Resiliency Center. We're doing a double-blind randomized controlled study of our reflective parenting program, and it's being funded through the NICHD. And I'd like to thank the rest of my team, John Greenenberger, Natalie Levine, Diane Reynolds, Bronwyn Talbot, Melissa Jacobs, and Kevin Grunberg. Those are the members of my team. Now, there are 4 main concepts in the book. The first is that the most important thing a parent will ever do for their child is to build and maintain a strong relationship. The second concept is that it's a person's reflective capacity that is the basis, the foundation of all strong relationships. And thirdly, that reflective capacity is how we perceive the mind, whether it be our own mind or the minds of others. It's a little bit like an X-ray. It's like an X-ray vision. You can see inside the mind. But just like with X-rays, they tell you a lot, but sometimes they're not so accurate. It's the same with reflective thinking. And finally, I bring in a lot of neuroscience into the book. And one of the neuroscience ideas that's very prominent is that it's the genes that lay out the basic blueprint for the child's brain at birth, but the parent-child relationship carves out and refines the circuitry of that child's brain. Now, I got really involved in studying neuroscience. So neuroscience is a kind of like the theme music or the backbone of the book. And there's a little bit of neuroscience in every single chapter related to whatever that chapter is about. I start the book with a whole chapter on neuroscience because one of the most startling things I discovered when I first got involved in neuroscience is that we don't actually perceive the outside world the way it really is. It's a little hard to believe, I know, but it's our brain that constructs our perceptions. It feels to us like we're really right in direct contact, like we know exactly what's going on. It turns out it's our brains that construct our perceptions. Our brains receive little bits and pieces of sensory data and then puts it together a little bit like you might a Lego set, but it's highly influenced by what your emotion is. It's highly influenced by what your current need state is. It's highly influenced by your own past experiences. It's influenced even by your own wishes and expectations. So you can see there's a lot of personal influence on our perceptions of the world. And that's with objects. It gets even more complicated when it has to do with our perceptions of other people. And if you need any proof of this, you can look at these 2 optical illusions. I hope that the screen has kind of stretched it out. I hope it still works. So, okay, it works? Good. So the picture on the left is a static picture. It's a static drawing. But your brain puts it together as if there's motion. Does everybody see that? Now, there's no motion in the picture, trust me. But that's how your brain perceives it. The one on the right is a 2-dimensional drawing, but it really looks like 3D. You don't need 3D glasses even. Okay. Again, when it comes to other people, this is what's going on. It's our brains that's constructing our perception of what other people are doing, thinking, and feeling. I like to say, and if you take home no other thing that I say today, this would be the one to take home. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is everything else. Okay, so this is the outline of my book. I'm going to talk about why I wrote the book. I'll talk about why I believe that relationships, the parent-child relationship, matters so much. I'll talk about what reflective parenting is and why it's so important. I'll present what I think of as the reflective parenting toolkit. I'm going to give examples of how to apply reflective parenting. And at the end, I have some conclusions and an epilogue. You get very thirsty when you're talking. Okay, so this is why I wrote the book. I'm sure you realize that's me and my kids and my family. And I wrote the book because parenting is really stressful. Parents these days in particular are in a veritable pressure cooker of stress. Now, of course, some stress just comes with the territory of raising children. Some stress comes from the outside world, like the economy, or global warming, or terrorism. Some stress comes from your family circumstances, whether you're living in poverty, for example, or there's been a death of a parent, or divorce, or any other kind of stressful circumstances in your family. But a lot of stress actually comes from more internal sources. What a parent's beliefs are, their attitudes. And these stresses are what I'm going to be talking about today. This is what the reflective parenting is really designed for. Now, parents these days have come to believe all kinds of beliefs, things like they have to be a perfect parent. Like they have to do everything, give their child every single opportunity to do well in life. That parents have come to believe that there's a right way to parent. That there's a right answer to their question or the right solution to their problem. And it's their job to go and find it. And of course the internet is certainly willing to oblige. There's certainly all the right answers on the internet. But all of those beliefs actually are stress-inducing. Those beliefs are adding to parents' stress. And so one of my aims in this book is to sort of take a little steam out of that pressure cooker and to present, I think, a little more of a realistic approach to parenting. One in which parents realize they don't have to be perfect, that there's no one right way to parent. In fact, there's many ways, and they're all equally good, and they all lead to good outcomes. That there's always more than one answer to your question, and there's always more than one solution to your problem. There's always more than one way to look at this situation. Now, let me explain why this book puts the parent-child relationship front and center and says that it's the most important thing a parent will ever do. Well, all the research shows that when kids have strong relationships, they just tend to do better in life. They just tend to do better in the long run of life, not just when they're kids, but even into adulthood. And they do better in all the areas that parents care about. Getting along with other people, doing well in school. Your relationship can help your child do better in school. That's a nice one. Becoming a responsible person. Now, the child's brain comes into the world not fully developed, obviously. And the parent plays an enormous role in helping that child's brain mature. What I like to talk about, or what I describe, is that children literally internalize through brain mechanisms how they're related to. How the parent relates to the child becomes how the child relates to themselves. So how the parent soothes the child becomes how the child soothes themselves. How the parent supports the child becomes the child's inner way of supporting themselves. How the parent criticizes the child becomes how the child criticizes themselves. I like to think of the parent-child relationship as creating your child's inner GPS. Does anyone ever leave home anymore without their cell phone with a little GPS on it to tell them, how to walk 3 blocks to the restaurant? No. And our children need that GPS, and how you've raised them becomes their own internal mechanism for how they're going to become a person and navigate their way through the world. So I keep emphasizing this idea of a strong relationship. But what is a strong relationship? A strong relationship is it's sort of defined by how the child feels, I should say. So it's one in which the child feels safe and protected by the parent. It's one in which the child feels comforted and soothed, that the parent makes an effort to comfort and soothe them when they're distressed. It's one in which the child feels cared about. The parent has concern for the child, empathizes with the child. It's one in which they feel understood by the parent, that the parent gets where they're coming from. Right? The parent doesn't have to agree, but gets where they're coming from. And it's certainly one in which the child feels accepted for who they are as a person. We all want to be accepted for who we are, warts and all, right? Children, this is what children want. And it's one in which the child feels supported. And what that means is when the child can't handle something on their own, that they know that they can count on their parent to help fill in, do it for them, or be a cheerleader, helping them realize that they can handle things. Now, I want you to pay attention to the fact that I've said strong relationship, but nowhere have I said a perfect relationship. The point is, there is no such thing as a perfect relationship, and it wouldn't even be good to try. Turns out that children develop a sense of trust of others, and they develop more adaptive coping skills from real relationships. And real relationships have a mixture of times when you feel good and times when you feel distressed. Times where you feel understood and times where there's misunderstanding. Times where you're in sync with your parents and times when you're not in sync. And times where you're getting along and times where you're not getting along. It's this combination. And it's important for parents to recognize and accept this inherent messiness in the relationship, not to get too bent out of shape when things aren't going well. Because when parents get too upset that things aren't going well, it only adds more stress, which isn't good. I'd like to give parents, and this is another good one, another good thing to take home as a reassuring note. All healthy families are in sync about a third of the time. They're out of sync about a third of the time, and they're getting back in sync the rest of the time, the rest of the third. Yeah. And it's really, children don't learn much when things are going smoothly. They learn when parents and children are working to get back in sync. This is when you're really developing your child's reflective muscle. Children aren't born knowing how to be reflective. They have to learn it. And how do they learn it? They learn it through somebody who's reflective with them in the relationship. I think of the relationship is like a really strong rubber band. You can put a lot of tension in it, and it can pull apart, but it comes back together. Does everybody read this slide? Okay. The woman on the left, me. I had a toddler, and then I had twins. But while I was pregnant, my son says to me, "Mommy, next time I'm in your tummy, I want to be in there with someone else." And I use this to illustrate this point that I make in the book, that human beings, our very survival is grounded in our social relationships. We are the most social creatures on earth. We have the largest and most complex social network. And so to a very large extent, I believe that a major role of a parent is to have a social relationship with their child so they can teach their child how to be a competent social being. Right? Now it turns out, it's not all touchy-feely, oh, it's a good relationship. It turns out that all the things you teach your child about being a competent social person are all the things your kid needs to learn to also do well in school and get along with everybody else. Because when you're teaching your child things like, you have to wait your turn, or I'm busy now, I can't help you, or you have to share, or you have to cooperate, or you have to collaborate. All those things are building the muscle of your child's ability to self-regulate their impulses, their behaviors, and their emotions. And that is the quintessential essence of being a well-functioning person. That's what enables you, later on in life to, you want to be really nasty to someone and then you go, probably not a good idea. That's that self-control. And that's the kind of self-control that is being taught within the relationship as a child is learning how to be a competent person. Okay, so let me get to literally what reflective capacity is. I've talked about it a lot. It goes by many different names. I call it reflective capacity. Some people call it reflective thinking. A lot of the researchers call it reflective function. Some people call it mentalization. But whatever name you call it, this is the definition. Being reflective means that you automatically relate to other people mind to mind. It means you automatically recognize that everybody has their own mind, and that their mind is separate from yours. And what's in their mind might be the same, or it might be different than what's in your mind. It also helps you recognize that whatever anyone does or says is connected to something going on in their mind. Now, it turns out that from the perspective of the brain, speaking is actually a motor action. So what you hear people say or what you see people do, you automatically jump to some conclusion of what might be motivating that. What's going on inside their mind that's motivating that action or those words? Well, what goes on inside a mind? Well, what goes on inside a mind are things like feelings, intentions, like what's your purpose or motivation, what your goal is, what your thoughts are. And so in a nutshell, I emphasize this over and over again. Being reflective is what allows you to see your child's perspective about the world as well as your own perspective. Now, it turns out, I mean, it sounds very esoteric, but being reflective is actually an innate, ordinary capacity. If you've had reflective parents when you're growing up, you're probably going to be reflective yourself. And it's a mental skill, and it can be measured. There's actually a whole different number of structured interviews that we can measure reflective thinking, and it can be measured on a 10-point scale. And again, a reassuring note, you only have to be average. You only have to have about a 5 or a 6, okay, to have a good outcome. In certain situations, particularly when children are a little more vulnerable, some parents have to actually be more of like a 7, 8, or 9, but I'll talk about that later. Now, I want to remind you that most of the brain operates without conscious awareness, including the mental skill of being reflective. So we're doing this automatically and unconsciously most of the time, which means that we're automatically, without being aware of it, jumping to conclusions about why people are doing whatever it is they're doing or saying whatever it is they're saying. Now, when I talk about reflective parenting to parents, a lot of times their eyes glaze over and they go, oh my God, I have way too much to do. I can't be bothered to be thinking about being reflective all the time. I can't even remember where my keys are half the time. So I'd like to remind people that it's happening automatically. Most of the time we're reflecting automatically. And I'd like to illustrate this. I illustrate this with this picture. I'm going to ask the audience. You see the woman on the right, the woman with the lighter hair? Would someone like to tell me what she's doing? Go ahead, just.
Giving an apple to her. She's offering.
She's offering an apple. She's giving an apple. Right. Okay. Now, I asked the question, what is she doing? And the answers I got is what's her intention. It's so automatic. We don't pay attention to the actions. We pay attention to our assumption about the reason for the action. Okay, this is my whole point. Thank you. Appreciate those answers. Now, in truth, there could be some other reason, right? Like, when I ask people, could there be any other reason? Well, she could be just showing the apple. She could be getting the other person to admire what a lovely apple this is, right? Or she could be kind of devilish, and she could be saying, I have a juicy apple, and you don't. Right? We don't know, right? It's a little ambiguous. And this is my point. Whatever assumptions you have about why your child is doing something, It could always be something different. You never know for sure. And being open to that possibility is what allows you to correct misunderstandings. Okay. So here's some other examples. I assume most of you look at these pictures and think, that baby is probably feeling sad, and that teenager is probably, well, she's probably irritated with her parents, you know, saying whatever, right? Okay, so we know this. And what is it about being consciously reflective that helps us? So, as I said, I mean, there's lots of examples of like really high skills that we do without being conscious, right? Like driving a car, right? How many of you have been driving and you're thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner, only to discover, oh my God, someone just swerved in front of you and you haven't even been paying attention, right? So we shift in and out of conscious awareness. Well, the benefit of being consciously reflective is that we can have an opportunity to be more accurate and modify our initial impressions. Now, it turns out actually that this baby could be feeling sad, but also lonely or scared, right? Could be feeling more than one thing, right?
Have a dirty diaper.
Have a dirty diaper, Mommy! Right, and so, and could even be feeling, people could be feeling more than one thing and opposite things. So like we know that like teenagers, even teenagers who are showing us how independent they are, they really like it when we're concerned about them. You can have competing feelings. Now, this idea that everybody sees the world in their own way is particularly important with your spouse. So what's going on here with Alex and Connor, okay? So these are little twins, and Alex is about to take Connor's pacifier out of his mouth. Can you all see that, I hope? But Alex and Connor's mother is thinking, "Aw, that's so cute and adorable." And the father is thinking, "Oh my God, Alex is being kind of aggressive with his brother." They think different things. The thing about how we operate is that whenever we have a perspective, we assume it's the only perspective to have, that we're right, it's the truth, right? It's really hard to remember that everybody else has their perspective that seems right and true to them. Okay. Now, the truth is, another truth, is misunderstanding happens all the time. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, one of which is I just explained, because whatever we perceive, we assume it's right and true, and that whatever you're perceiving must be wrong, right? There's a lot of reasons why misunderstanding happens, because of how the brain operates. Now, I'd like to reassure you, misunderstanding and conflict are normal and necessary, but it happens a lot. One reason is because, well, we automatically jump to a conclusion about why somebody is doing something, but we can't really ever know for certain, right? I mean, the mind, we're perceiving the mind, it's hidden inside someone's mind. We can't really see it directly. Another reason is that, so when we jump to a conclusion, make some interpretation or inference about why someone's doing something, turns out we tend to respond more to our interpretation than to what the person's really doing. I think you're being mean, so I'm going to respond to you as if you in fact are mean. Now, other people's behavior also activates feelings in us. And again, we tend to respond more to our own feelings about the action than to what's actually going on with the other person. And again, most of the time it's happening outside our conscious awareness, so a lot of times we're actually blind to the fact that we've misunderstood. Is there anything we can do about these misunderstandings? Yes. That's the whole point of reflective parenting. It's designed to help us reduce misunderstandings, but manage them when they happen. So I'd like to emphasize that when you bring reflective thinking into conscious awareness, this requires you to push the pause button, slow down, be in the present moment. A little bit like mindful awareness a little bit. Then you really look at the behavior. What are you doing? What's your child doing? Look at all the details of it. And then get into a curious, wondering mindset. What could be happening? I thought it was this, but it could be that or this. About your child and about yourself. And then you take what you've thought and put it together to figure out how you're going to respond. And you give it a try. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you go through the process again. Try it again. But the point is that being reflective means being open to the possibility there's other ways of seeing the situation. And I'll explain a little more later why that is so important. Now, we all have a sense of when someone's being reflective or not. We have a gut feeling about it. So reflective thinking is a mental skill in which we see the world from our child's perspective as well as our own. You tell me whether you think this father is reflective or not. So the child's in a little puddle there and saying, "It's deep." And the father says, "No, it's not. Stop your fussing." Not too reflective. But this father, after taking a reflective parenting group, says, "Yes, I see it's deep. If it's too scary, I can help you." So what is it that actually goes into someone having a low versus a high reflective capacity? I like to say that in every parent-child relationship, there's a you, a me, and a we. The you is the child, me is me, the parent, and the we is how we mutually influence one another. And whether a parent is low or high on the reflective thinking scale has to do with how many links they can make between behavior and mind in an individual, but also between individuals. So let me give you an example. Here's a mother and a daughter, and the mother's been trying to get the daughter to do her homework, and it's obviously not going too well. So a mother with kind of a low reflective capacity might say something like this. I tell her to do her homework, but she just rolls her eyes. What am I supposed to do? Not much awareness there of any link between behavior and mind. This is a low reflective capacity. A mother with a bit more average, like a 5 or 6 reflective capacity, might say something like this. I tell her to do her homework. And I know I do it in a kind of controlling way, and that makes her angry and makes her resist doing her homework even more. Now this mom's a lot more aware of the link between her child's behavior and mind and between the influences that they're having on each other. Now a mom with a really high reflective capacity says, I recently have had so much to do at work, it has caused me to come home late. That's been making me feel guilty that I'm not giving my daughter enough attention. So when I see her not doing her homework, I blame myself. But I think that my guilt is actually making me act in a more negative and controlling way. And that's certainly not helping us. It only seems to be pushing her away. So I have to step back and not let my guilt cloud my thinking so much. If I don't feel so guilty, it'll help me stop focusing so much on her homework and get back to just hanging out and having some fun, which I know she likes to do. Now that's a lot of links that woman is making, and that's a really high reflective capacity. Okay, so let's look at what I call the reflective parenting toolkit. Well, it's not hammers and screwdrivers. The toolkit consists of the skill of reflective thinking, along with 10 guiding principles that are associated with helping to keep a parent's reflective thinking as high as possible, or designed to help reduce a parent's stress, and are also factors that we know are associated with children doing better in life. And I've talked about many of them, and I'm going to just emphasize a few of them here. One of them is balancing empathy and limit setting. A lot of times when parents hear me talk about reflective parenting, they think I'm emphasizing empathy, right? And they think actually that if you're going to empathize and understand your child, it means you have to give in to your child or go along with what they want. No, it doesn't. You can empathize with someone. I know I know you really wish I would buy you that candy. But the important thing is that as much as you empathize, you also still have to set limits, right? I know you're angry, but you still can't kick me when you're angry, right? Setting limits is really important, but you're going to be more effective in setting limits if you also get where your kid is coming from and can communicate that. Another one I want to talk about is being more positive than negative. This is kind of simplistic perhaps, but turns out that when parents are more positive about their children tend to do better than when parents are negative about their child. So I always recommend to parents, no matter what's going on with their child, to try to look at more about what their child's strengths are rather than their weaknesses. What's good about their child rather than what's bad. Right? What they like about their child more than what they don't like about their child. The other one I want to talk about is repairing the relationship. Now, children can deal with the fact that misunderstandings occur. Children can even deal with the fact that conflict occurs. What children can't deal with is when there's a rupture or break in the connection with the parent. This can happen either when a parent becomes so angry, the child becomes terrified that the parent doesn't love them anymore or might abandon them, or when the parent gets too distant. Parents can sometimes get so upset that they withdraw from their child. That's what children can't handle, and that has to be repaired. Parents have to go back and bring the relationship back together and reassure the parent, reassure the parent too, but reassure the child that the connection is there. I still love you, we're okay, I know it was terrible, but we're back together again in one way or another. And finally, parents have to adjust their parenting to who their child is. Every child is different. There's no one size fits all. You have to parent according to who your child is. And the motto I like to say is, raise the child you have, not the child you wish you had. Okay, so, all right, I still have a little time, good. So now I want to talk about reflective parenting in action, okay? So here's little Liam. He's about 2.5, and he's just had a little baby sister. Her name is Olivia, and he's crawled into her cradle. And now we have to figure out, why is Liam in the cradle with his baby sister? Well, it could be because he wants to hit her, right? It could be because he just wants more attention. Or it could be he just wants to be a baby. But the point is, what did Liam's mother think, right? Because that's what matters. Okay, so here's Suzanne, Liam's and Olivia's mother. She's a lovely mother, very dedicated. But Liam has been having a hard time with his new baby sister. And so Suzanne's kind of scared when he crawls into that cradle. She's really scared that he might hurt the baby. So she yells at him and says, Liam, get out of that cradle right away. And he doesn't. So then she gets a little more anxious, and so she kind of grabs him. It's a little rough, and takes him out of the cradle. Well, that gets him upset, and he throws a toy. And she yells at him, we don't throw toys. And that makes him cry more. Well, now they're going down the rabbit hole of, really not a good interaction, right? A little bit later, Suzanne's kind of upset with herself and trying to rethink, could she have done this any differently? So we talk together, and I say to her, was there any other thing that could have been on his mind besides trying to hurt his sister? And she says, "Aw, my poor little baby Liam. He just wants to be a baby himself," right? So the story has a happy ending, because the next time he crawls into the cradle, she says to him, "Oh, Liam, you just want to be my little baby." And Liam goes, "Ooh, gaga." Anyhow, and then he jumps out of the cradle and says, "Now I'm a big boy." Right? Anyhow, one of the major points of this book is to talk about different reflective techniques for dealing with situations where you have misunderstood, where you haven't gotten it right, where there is conflict. And every chapter in the book has a section on suggestions and tips for parents, or for whatever the topic is of that chapter. And one of the techniques is called reflective storytelling. And this is where you talk about the conflict that happened as if it were a story. Okay? The children love stories. So Suzanne tried this technique with Liam later in that day, and she said, Liam, would you like to hear the story of what happened with you and Mommy earlier? And of course, yeah. So basically all it means is she says, well, you crawled into Olivia's cradle, and Mommy thought you were going to hit Olivia. So I got kind of scared, and I yelled at you to get out, but you didn't want to get out. So then I picked you up really harshly, and then you got angry, and you threw a toy. And then I yelled at you even more, and you got even more upset. But now Mommy realizes you just wanted to be a little baby. And so Mommy understands better now. I'll do better again next time. Now that kind of story for a child is incredibly instructive because the mother is teaching the child a lot of important lessons. I can feel this way one minute, I can feel a different way, I can get it wrong, I can get it right. This is the way, another way that children absorb this kind of reflective thinking skill. Now, throughout the book, I talk about a number of different brain systems, and I'm just going to mention two here. One is the mirror system, and this is a behavioral matching system where whenever we see someone else's behavior, we recreate that behavior inside our own motor system, in our own head. So we can get a sense of why they're doing what they're doing, because we know what their intention is, because we know what our intention would be if we were performing that same behavior. We know what they might be feeling because we know what we would be feeling. Okay? And I love this quote by James Baldwin, who says, children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them. Children have an amazing capacity, we all know, to imitate. And it turns out they learn more through imitation than they do through instruction. That's why they know how to use their cell phone when they're only a year old. Okay. The other system I just want to mention is the mentalization system. And this system, the mirror system we share with other primates. It operates non-consciously. The mentalization system is unusual because it's operating at a very high level when we're kind of sitting around and doing not much at all. And when we're sitting around doing not much at all, our minds are very active and often going over all of our social relationships in one way or another, free-floating. Just when you think about that really good retort you should have said to your coworker when they insulted you, right? Okay, but the mentalization system is what allows us to realize that other people are the same as us and different. It's what allows us to shift back and forth between the perspective of the other and the self. This is particularly important when it comes to empathy. Now, empathy is good, right? But even a good thing, too much of a good thing isn't good, right? So too much empathy is not good. When a parent feels the child's distress too strongly, like the parent can become so upset, they're as upset as the child. And that's not good because one of the roles of the parent is to help calm the child's distress. Well, if you're as distressed as your child, you can't calm them down. In fact, you might escalate how upset they are. Mentalization system allows the parent to step back, get outside of the child's perspective, and to a more distant perspective. Now, a parent who has not enough empathy can work on trying to think about a situation where maybe they might have felt what the child is feeling. Okay. If I have just a minute here to talk about stress, there's a whole chapter on stress in the book, but the whole point of stress is that stress can be from anything. Stress just means you're overwhelmed. Okay? And stress is okay as long as it's regulated. It means you can be stressed, but then you recover. Stress can be coming from just having too much to do, can be coming from being in an unfamiliar situation, and it can be coming from just having a very intense negative emotion. Children get highly stressed just when they're very frightened or very disappointed or very sad. And it's the parent's role to regulate the child's stress. That's what the child turns to you for. They expect you to do that. We know that even when children are raised in a highly adverse circumstances, we know that when children are raised in highly adverse circumstances, it can have a long-term negative effect on them. But if they have a parent who's reflective and helping them get through it, it can protect them against that negative impact. Can I take 2 seconds more? Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of reflective ways to regulate children's distress, and one of them is just sitting there and being there. Children get a lot of comfort just from the presence of their parent. They also get a lot of comfort from just being listened to. Don't you like to just sometimes be listened to? Well, so do your children, without you saying anything. But if you need to talk, it's always a good idea to empathize. I know it must be hard. I know you must be feeling sad. That's what empathy is. Validation is saying something to the effect of, I might not be feeling that way, but I can see why you're feeling that way. Whenever you talk to your children about stress, emotional distress, is to emphasize that it's usually time limited, that it'll go away, you'll get better, that it's normal and it can be managed. Because when people are too frightened about stress, or people are too frightened about their emotions, they actually don't do as well. When people can normalize it, it's a really important thing to normalize these things. And I always say, when in doubt, just survive. And one of the things I emphasize in the book for regulating stress is to reframe whatever perspective you're having. If it's a negative perspective, a perspective that's making you anxious or pessimistic, is to try to think about it in a different way so that you can come over to the more positive, optimistic side. And I have a whole lot of examples in the book. I even think about the terrible twos as the terrific twos. That's what I call them. Okay, so all the reflection you're doing with your child from the time, well actually from the time they're in utero, because parents start to be reflective. You know, mother might say, oh honey, you're kicking me. I know it's because you're angry at me. I had too much garlic at lunch. The parent imbues the child with a mind way before the child's even born, but certainly as soon as they're born. That's what I mean by being reflective with your child, and that's the process that your child will internalize. So that when they're at that board meeting later on, you know, they can talk without being too obnoxious. Okay, so in conclusion, the whole point is that being reflective as a parent will help you promote healthier development in your child. But it also, I hope you'll realize that being reflective will help you have a better relationship with whoever you're relating to, whether it be your spouse, your mother, or your mother-in-law. Now, every story has an end, and the end of this story is that your child grows up and becomes an adult. And it turns out that being reflective is just as important with your adult child as it ever was with your young child. And even when your child becomes a parent themselves, it actually is even more important. And so I'm just going to end with that note.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pally. I know that I learned so much, and I wish that I'd had a chance to take your class earlier, but my adult daughter is there, and I hope that I've learned and I can be a better reflective parent now after hearing these
well,
wise
I have to say, this is the book I needed when I was a parent.
Well, we are all so lucky to get to learn from Dr. Pally, and thank you all for being here this evening, and thank you, Dr. Pally, for sharing your knowledge with us. And now, Dr. Miklowitz and Dr. Pally are going to come up on stage for a discussion, and following the discussion, you'll have opportunity to ask questions.
Up here?
So first I want to thank Dr. Pally for a very nice talk. And I was sitting here wondering where this book was when I was raising my now 26-year-old daughter. I know that a lot of this would have been very useful. And it's interesting because for me it also dovetails with some work we're doing in the Child and Adolescent Mood Disorders Clinic on mentalization therapy, which is really trying to use the same set of principles in working with people with mood disorders, trying to understand what is in their head, how do your feelings interact with them, with theirs, how is your relationship, how is that separate from them versus you versus your self-concept, their self-concept. But the same ideas come up in psychotherapy a lot. So what we thought we would do is I'm going to ask some questions of Dr. Pally, none of which she's seen, by the way, and give her a chance to respond, and then of course we'll open it up for your questions as well. So start off, who won the World Series in 1966?
Well, if you knew me, you'd know I know nothing about sports.
Anybody want to take a stab at that one? Okay. The one question that comes up for me immediately is, so we've had a lot of parenting books thrown at us in the last 20 years. And there's Love and Logic, there's how to talk to your kids so that your kids will listen. There's what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect when you're not expecting. There's quite a few out there. So can you help us to understand how this approach is different than some of the approaches that have been popular over the last 20 years? Is yours not working?
Oh, so can you hear me now? Oh, okay, great, fabulous, okay. So I recommend to parents to get as much information as possible. Read all those books. There's nothing, they all have something good to say. The whole point of being a reflective parent is that your job is to think for yourself. So I think of it as read everything and then think what makes most sense to you. It's like having a good spice rack. You know, you have all these spices, but whatever meal you're making, you have to pick and choose what seasonings you're going to be using for that meal. And so one of the important things about parenting, I think, is to get back to helping parents, encourage parents. And since there's no one right way to do it, and there's no one absolute right answer, is to get parents to feel more confident. Turns out actually when parents are more confident, kids tend to do better. So I'm trying to help parents feel more confident that they can come up with their own solutions. But it's good to get a lot of input. So that would be my answer.
So to go along with that, a criticism of many modern parenting programs has been that they emphasize validation of the kid's emotions even when the kid is behaving inappropriately. And some have said this risks turning our kids into narcissists. What would you say about that?
Well, that's a great question. I tried to address it a little bit in my talk, in that you cannot tell someone how they should feel. They're just going to feel however they feel. And there's nothing wrong with letting them know you know how they feel. But that is not enough for parenting. So your child can feel angry, selfish, whatever they're feeling. They still have to, your role is to teach them how to behave despite the fact of whatever they're feeling. So yes, you may be really, really angry with me, but you still can't kick me, right? Yeah, you might not like what I did, but I don't like you cursing at me. And you know, parents often feel this helpless feeling as if like their kid isn't going to listen to them. Well, I think actually children more often than not want to listen to their parents. Now, they may not always let you know, but they do take in what you have to say. Now, you're not going to have the kind of control over your child where right away they're going to do exactly what you want, but eventually, it was a lesson my mother-in-law taught me. You have to say it 1,000 times, sometimes 10,000 times before they get it. And sometimes they don't let you know they've gotten it, but then they go out in the world and they're using just exactly what you said. So we're not going to raise narcissists by validating that I can see why you're feeling that way. The narcissism comes from it, you know, running the show.
So let's change the scenario a little bit. Let's imagine you're a parent.
And can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
Actually, I think there's some narcissism that comes from when a person has never felt understood. And they're constantly striving to be understood. So, yeah. Some people...
When you were talking about narcissism.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to go there.
Let's change the scenario for a second and say that you're a parent who's raising a kid with depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. How do these same tenets apply? How do these techniques, how would you change them, or would you have to?
Well, if your child has some kind of disorder like depression, or it's even more important to be reflective. Why is that? Just because you're depressed or you're bipolar illness, you still need a connection. You still need someone to know that someone cares about you and is connected to you. So I think these ideas apply even more. I mean, a lot of these illnesses make people feel very isolated. And having a relationship with your child where you can sort of, you get where they're coming from, you know what they're feeling, you know what they're going through, you accept them for who they are, can help someone have just at least one little island of not being quite so isolated.
What about the extreme when you have a kid with autism spectrum, where there is very little mentalization in the kid's day-to-day interactions?
Well, I would say when in doubt, communicate your acceptance of your child. And actually, even with autism, there's always some kernel, no matter how different someone else is, no matter how their thinking seems so disturbed, there's always some kernel that you can connect to. And I think that's what we strive to do as parents. Even the parent of an autistic child, they can learn about what autism is and understand how their child's mind is working. And there are, schools that work with autistic kids, and that's what they're doing with the parents, is helping the parent to sort of see how the child's mind is working. And that can give you more of a sense of connection. It always helps when you don't see the other person as alien. If you have some way that you can see their, how they work.
Have you ever applied these assumptions or techniques when you have somebody who's suicidal? Mm-hmm. You have a patient who's suicidal or a relative? How does that play out?
Yes, well, my whole family is rampant with depression, so I've been, so I understand that. And, when someone's suicidal, their mind is not working so well, right? In a way, what I like to communicate, what I think about communicating is the idea that that's how you might be feeling, but I feel very differently about you. I know you don't feel like life is worth it, or you feel like you're horrible, or everyone would be happier without you, but I don't feel that way. Your dad doesn't feel that way. I know all your friends don't feel that way. Helping to offer an alternative mindset that's more positive and caring. And that's, I think, the best we can do. We can't cure everything. We can't fix everything, but we can offer something that feels like I care even if you can't right now. Something like that. I know that's how I like to be talked to when I'm depressed.
Can you say a little bit about parents who are experiencing a lot of anger and hostility towards their kids?
Yes. I think one of the most common, well, there's a lot of different reasons why parents are angry. I mean, if you were raised by an angry, hostile parent, you're going to be more likely to be angry and hostile. Because, as I said, we parent how we were parented. It's really a common thing. But there's another reason, a really common reason why parents get angry and hostile. You're making me feel guilty. Right? I have to set a limit on you. And you're making me feel guilty. And I don't like to feel guilty, so I'm going to be angry at you, right? I told you 10 times you can't have ice cream. But the parent might feel guilty because, oh, the kids had a hard day, and maybe they're being a little too stickler about the whole thing, and maybe they really should let their kid have ice cream, or whatever it is. So parents' guilt, the parents' uncertainty. You're making me feel uncertain. I don't know what to do. So parents often ramp up their sense of control. Right? So those kinds of things are often, or if a parent is having a hard time, is taking it too personally, that girl with the eye rolling, right? Now, if her mother took it too personally, she could get really angry because she might feel really disrespected or feel like her daughter doesn't like her, doesn't value her. The daughter's just being a teenager who's trying to show her mom, you can't control me, right? But it's not personal. If there's, again, one message I try to convey to parents is not to take it personally. And, or a parent might get angry because they feel helpless. Like they've told their child 3 times, it's time to take a bath, and the kid still isn't taking a bath. Feeling helpless is an awful feeling, but feeling angry is a powerful feeling. So sometimes parents get angry when it's really that they're just feeling helpless. So the whole point of the whole thing is for the parent to pay attention to what they're doing and what they're feeling and kind of think it through and sort of see as, something going on in me that's making me be so angry.
It's interesting, there was a study not too long ago about eye rolling in teenagers. Leave it to the researchers, right? Studies, everything.
Right.
But interestingly, when teenagers were most likely to eye roll was when they were trying to regulate their own emotions.
Yes.
When there was some sort of a provocation.
Yes.
They would roll their eyes, which of course would annoy the person they were talking to.
Yes.
That was actually an attempt to get their own emotions.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because when in doubt, assume whatever your child is doing is because they're trying to cope. A lot of times that we think of a child as misbehaving, what the child is really doing is trying to cope with something that's difficult for them. Sometimes what they're doing is trying to communicate to you, I feel terrible. Well, what's the best way to communicate that? Is to do something obnoxious so that your parent comes and tries to, figure it out. Sometimes your child actually makes you feel awful because they're feeling awful. It's a kind of a way of communicating to just how awful I feel. Right? And when parents can realize that it's a communication, they're going to be less hostile and take it less personally. Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you a story about my own daughter. My own daughter, she was in 4th grade, and she was trying to get me to help her with her homework. And I was in there helping her, and she's yelling at me, and you're not helping, and that's not useful. And I finally said to her, honey, I'm just trying to be helpful, but you're treating me so badly. I'm not going to help you with your homework. You're just so angry with me. And she said, Mom, I'm not angry with you. I'm just frustrated. I can't do my homework. And so that's the kind of shift I try to encourage parents to take.
And did she then roll her eyes after that?
I rolled my eyes at her.
I would think so. Yeah. So let's consider this scenario. Somebody's been through the parenting group and they've learned how to do this very well. They can mentalize, they can reflectively parent, but they have a husband who does the opposite. Or they have, God forbid, a parent-in-law who jumps in and undoes it.
Yes.
What would you recommend to a person like that?
Well, I have to say, now I might be a Pollyanna about this, but I think you only need one person in your court. I think kids can have a parent who's not very reflective, but as long as they have one, they'll still probably be okay. Kids can, how can I put this? When you have a spouse, the father or the mother who's not very reflective, whether you live with them or you don't live with them, the idea is not to badmouth the other parent, because the child needs to still have some kind of positive connection with the other parent, no matter how bad you think that parent is. But you can talk to your child and say, Mom or Dad, they have a hard time empathizing. They have a really hard time seeing your perspective. I could see why that would be very upsetting. It's their problem, not yours. Right? They have a hard time understanding. And it can be very hurtful and upsetting to you as a child, but that's their dilemma. You know, I wouldn't put them down for it. You know, sometimes I say they didn't learn very well from their mother, you know, something like that. But as long as you're reflective and you're helping your child process the effect of that other parent without putting the other parent down, I think that's going to be helpful. You know, actually, sometimes when kids have, you know, this sounds terrible to say, but sometimes when kids have had these kinds of difficult experiences, they actually get a certain extra strength from having to have made that effort to think these complicated issues through.
Lastly, before we open it up, can you talk a little bit about couples and how this might apply in couple relationships?
Yes.
I didn't say it was easy.
One of my favorite topics is one of the things I did a lot of was work with couples. And basically, what I say to couples over and over again, and what I say to my husband over and over again as well, is, okay, for example, you know, one spouse thinks, you know, the kid is just acting up. They're just being really difficult. And the parent says, well, honey, they're just having a hard time, right? So what I have couples do is say, from my perspective, because all you can do is talk about your own perspective. You can't talk about the truth. You can't talk about how the other person's supposed to feel. From my perspective, they're acting up. Well, from my perspective, they're having a hard time, right? And as a starting point, for people to allow each other to just see it differently, you know. You know, my husband will say something to me like, oh, come on, it's not that hard. You know, it's just a 2-mile hike. From your perspective, it's a 2-mile hike, right? But I think people have to recognize that other people just have different perspective. And if you're in a marriage, now, yes, maybe you have to come to some agreement on what you're going to do with the child, but that's okay, because kids can understand, you know, the kid can say to you, oh, come on, mommy, I know you're just doing this because this is what daddy wants, right? You know, you don't mind if I buy a $100, you know, pair of shoes. You know, daddy doesn't like to spend money. Well, okay, but we're agreeing on this. Yeah, sometimes I disagree with daddy, but we've decided that this is what we're going to do. So kids get it. You can't hide from your kids that you and their other parent are different. They know it better than you do. And so that's how I deal with it.
All right, the floor is now open. If anybody has questions, there is a microphone. Good enough to be walking it around. There's one right over here. And I will probably repeat your question just so everybody can hear it.
Hi. I was wondering, in your talk, you mentioned that kids cannot tolerate kids being unprepared.
Yes.
And so what would your suggestion be, you know, when you do have a divorce situation and where the child really has sort of been abandoned by one parent, and, you know, that parent just doesn't seem to get it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, how much it's affecting the child for the rest of their life.
Well, that's a terrible situation, isn't it? It's very sad. Now, again, as I said, children can go through quite a lot of adverse experiences in life. But if they have someone helping them to process it, so it's really sad. It really, really hurts to have your parent reject you or abandon you. So what does a child need? They need to know that they're not alone with it. If someone's there helping them process it. That's the critical thing. I mean, yes, when that, I mean, obviously, ideally, it would be great if it didn't happen, but that's just not how life is it, right? So the repair is going to have to come from the other person. What does the child need to know? It's not because of them, it's not because they were unworthy or anything else that it's very sad, but it's not about them, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of things you can do to support your child. Can't fix everything, but you can, and there will probably be an effect on your child. I like to say that no amount of great parenting can prevent your child from having problems. You can be the most reflective parent in the world. You can't prevent your child from having problems. The best you can do is to give your child the tools for handling the problems they have. And that's, in that situation, that's what the child needs. Somebody helping them have the tools for handling that. So that's, I guess, and that's a lot. That's a lot.
Is there a hand up? Yeah, way in the corner.
The microphone is coming to you.
Ernie gets his exercise.
I was ill last year, so I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old, and my 12-year-old's grades are falling, and I've tried to take away some of her privileges and stuff, like her phone, which is the only privilege she really cares about. What's a good method of reprimanding your child when they're acting out at home or in school, not taking their responsibility?
Well, I'm going to have to preface that by saying there's no right way to do it, okay? But you started by saying you were sick for a year.
Last year.
Yeah. Do you think that has something, I'm assuming you think that might actually have something to do with it.
Yeah, because I was very active with her studying in school before, but I feel like I haven't been so maybe that.
So usually the first thing I recommend, particularly if it's a 12-year-old who can have a conversation with you, is for you to have a conversation. You know, I think this is what might be happening. And to find out what your child thinks. I would do that maybe before I start reprimanding or before I start taking away privileges, because there's something that's going on with her. And the lesson she needs to learn is that she's upset and it's interfering with her wanting to study. And I don't know what it is. I can't predict that for you. But she's not trying to be bad. So usually punishment isn't going to work if there's some other emotional thing going on, like she's...
She's on her phone too much. I have tried to restrict that time, but sorry, they don't listen, basically. The 12-year-old and the 7-year-old.
Well, my guess is that it's a very complicated situation. I'm not sure I can exactly, tell you exactly what to do. But usually, there's a lot of times when I have to say parents, how can I put this, are conveying an expectation, but sometimes not conveying it in as confident and convincing way. Kids are going to spend time on the phone. But by 12, I usually start to have parents negotiating with their kids. This is really bothering me, and it's bothering me for the following reasons. When you spend so much time on your phone, don't get your homework done. I think your homework is really, really, really important. But it's not working for me, because my role is to help you get done what you need to do, what I think. My role is to protect you, right? And part of that is making sure that you do well in school. But so it's not working for me. But us having this, my taking your phone away isn't helping, right? My bugging you isn't helping. What could help? Can we think this through together so that I'm not always so upset and you're not always so upset with me? And to try to get the child a little bit active in the process, because by 12 they can start to do that, so that they own the problem along with you. It's not just you. That's just one of my thoughts.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize your point about saying to the kid it's not working for me.
Yes, yes.
Because in the case of cell phones and so on, the kid will say, Well, I can do my homework and talk on it.
Right.
I don't have problems with my attention like you do.
Right. Well, right. You might think that, and I'm sure you think that's true, but you know, it's not working for me because, right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we have a 12-year-old daughter, and we've tried in many ways to get. We have a 12-year-old daughter, and we've tried in many different ways, either rewarding or punishing, to get her to brush her teeth regularly. And I've explained the consequences of not brushing her teeth, and just nothing.
Well, I'm laughing because that was always a big issue in our house. And I just have to share with you how I dealt with it. I'm not recommending this to everybody, but I used to let my kids watch television while they were brushing their teeth, because they always were happy to watch a little extra television. And when my daughter got to college, people used to say to her, "My goodness, you brush your teeth so much." Anyhow, just keep trying. Never give up. The truth is...
Shouldn't they understand by that age the consequences?
No, they actually can't. Actually, that's a really good comment. Shouldn't they know by 12 what the consequences are? They don't. You know, the brain doesn't fully mature until we're in our mid-20s. 12 is only halfway there.
There's some question as to how mature it gets at age 20.
Yes, exactly. I'm still growing up. But yeah, so what I would say is be more patient. She's going to internalize it sometime, and if she doesn't, you've done your best. You know, we don't have control over everything. So.
I think you're next. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can.
I'm just amazed at all of this. We raised our children in the 50s at Benjamin Spock. And what it was the children were not the bosses of the house. And you didn't cater. You catered to your husband, and you took care of the children. You were the best for them.
Talking to the microphone because they're recording it.
You were the
Yeah.
best for the children in the 50s.
Yes, yes.
For their homework.
Right. And you also let them walk out on the street without any, worry. Yeah.
And you sent them to the library when they didn't know something.
Yes.
You brought them to the library, they did their homework. And you didn't take them every weekend, every minute of every day like my children do. They're adults now, even the grandchildren. But I don't know how mothers can do this. If they work, they come home, and what you're saying, I don't know where they have the energy to do it. I think it sounds wonderful, but I myself, I'm some product of my time.
Yes.
And I give it to the parents today, but then I think the marriages suffer.
Get them the book.
They're on 60 and 50 something.
Okay.
No, they don't want to hear from me.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I can comment on that. Yes. First of all, I like to say that every parent is an immigrant in the new generation, right? In many respects, parenting is this kind of mixed bag of parenting the way you were raised, coupled with trying to help your child cope with the generation they're living in, right? Remember, you're going to be gone. The people that your child is going to need to be connected to are their peers. And they're all living in a different generation. And so, I put this out to grandparents, right, that your children are going to be raising their children differently than you were raised or than you raised them, and that's just how it is. Get with the program is what I would say.
Right, we have time for two more, so yeah, go ahead.
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
My question to you is,
Oh.
I try to be a reflective parent, like when I pick her up at school, but she's like all firing at me all the time. And it's like she doesn't want me to say, do you have friend trouble? Is a test bothering you? Like, she does
That's
not
right.
want to engage.
And that's what being reflective means. Figuring out, my daughter does not want to engage, so I'm not going to talk. I think that would be a really reflective thing, yes.
That would, at our house, it would go on for a long time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so she's stormy, just...
Yeah, you're not in the mood to talk. I mean, what's the point of trying to talk to someone when they're communicating to you loud and clear, I don't want to talk?
Yeah, I just turn up NPR on my car.
Good, right?
You have time for one more? We'll get to yours.
So I just want to say thank you very much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
this wonderful talk.
Thank you.
It sounded like a mix of Thich Nhat Hanh and Marshall Rosenberg with his nonviolent communication.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. And it's a great reminder that there's so many different perspectives out there. Mine's not the only true one. Now the question is about grace in relationships. You talked about grace. And I'm just wondering if there's a magic number of how if you have 5, you should stop. Because if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and you want to withdraw, how many times can you do that, even though you reflect and say, hey, I need some time out now, so I'm going to withdraw. Is it okay if you let them know beforehand that you're going to withdraw so you can do as many as you need to? Is there a magic number?
Oh, I wish there were a magic number. There's no magic number to anything. But if you withdraw, because I've actually said to parents sometimes, you're too heated up. If you're too heated up and you're going to do something really stupid, walk out of the room, right? Just tell your child, I'm too riled up right now. I know whatever I say, it's not going to be good. I need to quiet down. I need to calm down, right? It's the communicating what's going on with you. That's the key. They see your behavior. They don't know why you're leaving. But if you communicate, it's me. I really encourage parents to take as much ownership for their own feelings as possible. And I can't tell you how many times it's okay to leave the room. I wish I could, but I can't. But I do know that when you're leaving the room, is to communicate that there's something going on inside you that you're having a hard time with. You know how you have a hard time sometimes? Mommies have a hard time too. And I need to, because I'm going to be a better mommy to you if I leave the room and calm down. That's the only thing I could offer, something like that.
Keeping in mind, of course, your kid may then follow you.
You may follow you, right? Right. Make sure the door is locked so they don't leave the house, things like that.
One more.
So I'm just a little bit further along the road than the fine young woman mom who has the teenage daughter. I've got 3 teenagers right now, and I feel like...
Poor you.
I feel like I've been...
Is there a microphone that she needs, or can you hear her?
So
Okay.
I feel like I've been pretty reflective throughout my kids' lives, and the idea of if they don't want to talk, we won't talk. But I feel like now I'm in these fine young ladies who are sharing the front row with me. We all get together monthly and share our
Wonderful.
parenting woes.
Wonderful.
But and I was just saying yesterday how angry I am, and I find my anger when you said that it can be power oriented, it can be different dynamics. You mentioned helplessness and uncertainty.
Oh, yes.
And so my one question is when you move to the land of sort of letting it be, and then you end up in the land of feeling constant helplessness and uncertainty, is the only option Thich Nhat Hanh, or is there something in parenting and engaging?
Yes. Well, I understand the question. I'm glad you have a support group, because I had the same thing, you know, desperation, you know, you band together with people in the same situation. But I think when children are adolescents, I came across this really wonderful piece of research that showed that when you ask teenagers, what's really important in your life, they say, having my parent be connected to me. As much as they're trying to prove to you they don't need you, they don't want to, they don't want to talk to you, who cares about what you think? Deep inside, they really do want you to be involved. So I wouldn't give up talking totally. It's like trickle-down economics, we know it doesn't work. But trickle-down parenting does work a little bit. You want to say, listen, you may not want to hear this from me, but I just need to say it. So turn your ears off, you know, little tricks to sort of keep the separateness. But don't give up talking. Don't give up sharing your wisdom. But make sure it's you. You know, sometimes I would say to my kids, you know, I have something on my mind that I'd really like to say to you, but I know you don't feel like talking right now. Okay, Mom, all right, say it, right? Right. Tricks like that. So it's a balancing act. Yes, it's a terrible, frightening thing to have an adolescent child, because you don't have total control. But trust me that your wisdom is kind of getting in there, and the more reflective you've been with them, they actually have some inner mechanisms for, you know, self-survival. You know, I've had parents, and it's this thing of it's not working for me. You're doing X, Y, Z, and it's making me really anxious. Now, maybe I shouldn't be so anxious. I know I need to trust you more. But look, you just have a mom who's anxious. So this would help me. Make it your own thing. And it's a little more palatable, I think, that way.
So let's thank Dr. Pally for having